think this is going to be a very interesting topic. Once again, good seeing everyone's faces on here. Let me share screen and give you a sense of what we're going to do. What? I'm just going to switch the camera. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So it looks like a lot of text. I'm going to actually pull up emails and whatnot, but I want to start off with this here. So this class, what's interesting about the 225th class, unlike a lot of topics, I think there is a lot of literature, videos, podcasts now, that a lot of it spends time on theory. And the problem for most human beings, most of us, right, is that taking a thought, taking a theory and putting it into practice, adopting it into your life, into your routine, is actually the hardest thing in the world. And yet most things out there are said as if like, yeah, don't you get it now? Just do that, you'll be good. And it's not true. And in practice, there's so many things. Parenting is usually one of the best analogies or parallels for leadership. It's just hard as hell. And if you ever meet a parent whose advice is, I always do this thing, all I say to them is, God, you don't have kids, do you? Anybody who has kids knows that you have to constantly adjust and evolve and situationally, I mean, human beings are, they say, the most adaptable creatures, like literally on the planet. But the problem also is we all adapt to each other and everything someone else is doing. So if something worked once, it won't work as well next time because everyone's adjusting and adapting. And so there's a lot of techniques and tools. So this was a topic that came up as a theme. So we had several themes. So if I can go through fast, I'll try to cover 3 different themes. Prioritization. The other one is this notion of being indecisive, which is, I think, one of the biggest kind of epidemic issues across human decision-making and leadership now. And then the silent killer of maybe. So we'll cover that as well if we can. But covering the first point here and why I think this point is important. The word iteration, I don't know if that word is familiar. It should be very familiar. The speed of iteration is probably the single biggest antidote to attack anything that is difficult, ambiguous, complex, uncertain, which is pretty much everything in life. Like, I think probably the most, interesting. The most easy thing might be like just taking a sip of water. Besides that, even getting a coffee is now full of ambiguity, complexity, and what kind of milk do you want? What kind of nut should you squeeze to create milk? And then what kind of, is it cold brew or this? I mean, it's like, just,
Too much.
can I just get something for what size, right? And the size names are different. I mean, it's like you need like glossaries simply to figure out how to get coffee. And so the speed of iteration is the single biggest saving grace when things are ambiguous and complex. And yet speed of iteration requires a certain mindset, requires you to be super aware and super light on your feet. It's like a sports athlete. And I don't know if you've seen, like, to me, amateurs obsess on getting one right play. And then when they get on the field, when they screw something up, they just can't play anymore. And the game's continuing. And one mistake on any game rarely ends the game. It's the series of fumbles that follow it, which is what happens when people get in their heads, is what makes you lose the game. Same thing occurs in leadership and life and decision making. You have to be light, you have to be able to move fast, correct mistakes quickly. And so one of the things and tools I think that will help you is this notion of how do you prioritize? How do you prioritize what you're going to work on first or what you're going to work on next? And I can't tell you how many people literally work like industrial age, factory working robots and just sit there, I don't know, eating some chips, drinking whatever you're drinking, look up on your screen and say, what's next? And then just punch down the list of what's next. Do not make adjustments. And everything is literally like a factory worker that just punching cards and just looking at what's next on your list. And that is the dumbest, most ineffective, and I will argue the most lethal way to work. It is lethal. It is no longer now just not efficient or effective. It's lethal. And so understanding how to rapidly prioritize anything in front of you, and at any given point, is one of the single most important elements to help you not only generate momentum, but iterate. So we're going to go into depth on this notion of now versus later. And some of you will say, well, I'll have now versus later versus much later to much, much later. I was like, shut your mouth, right? We're going to keep it simple, right? You'll see when you want to move fast, if you go beyond even 2 choices, it starts to go into confusion. Are there instances where you should have more than 2 choices? Of course. But generally speaking, when you want high speed, binary choices allow you to move fast. When you have 1 choice, it's having no choice. It tends to lead to blind spots and mistakes. When you have too many choices, it's the same as having no choices. You'll see the complexity and the confusion grind you to a halt. So now versus later, I just found this little quote. I win more for 1 reason. I move fast. By the time most people are done analyzing, I've already made 3 mistakes and found a better way. That's basically a quote defining the speed of iteration. Iteration is critical to succeed. This was on the internet. I thought it was kind of interesting. Someone asked ChatGPT, what's your most controversial take? So it goes into deep, like, look, it depends on context, politics, this and that. But the bolded part was what I found most interesting. This is what ChatGPT threw out, this individual. Most people are far less capable of independent thought than they believe. And society would function better if we openly acknowledge that some people should not have decision-making power over important matters. So it's talking about the fact that it goes on to the bottom. The idea that everyone's opinion is equally valuable is a feel-good lie. Some people are simply more competent, rational, and informed than others, and giving disproportionate influence to the uninformed or irrational drags everything down. Now, this is not my words. This is ChatGPT summarizing everything it saw on the internet to give this individual their most controversial take. Now, what we found was, AI, I don't know if you've ever tried to create an image using AI, you can almost never create the same image twice. So in the same way, if you punch this question in, you get many other variations, but generally speaking, if pressed, I bet you it will point to a similar direction. And it's this crazy insight that the sum total of the entire internet, right?
Yeah.
Of all knowledge out there, summarized, that's openly published, is saying people can't think for themselves.
Yeah.
Right?
It's actually saying they're far less independent than they thought, basically, meaning people actually think, but maybe it's like as they're trying, they realize, like, wait a minute, and is that why people are getting more quiet, more
And when I
silent in
say
their
they
head?
thought, I look at self-awareness.
Yeah.
Meaning, if you were to ever to drill at the level of self-awareness, it's like saying, you're not speaking independent thinking. You're regurgitating something that was either shoved into you through the education system, or something that you read, or some spouse or someone who just hammered something into your mental model, so you just say it as if it's an autoplay.
Yeah.
And this notion of independent thinking requires you to read first yourself, then the situation, and being able to properly compartmentalize to figure out what to do. So, which leads into, so the next 2 slides, what I'm going to do is, so this is kind of interesting. I pasted in here kind of what was sort of given back, but I'm going to go to the actual email so you can see what we did. So give me a second.
I'm going to show you how we used our AI coach. So if you're new to leadership in practice, I think last week or the week before we sort of launched, we shared this AI coach. So it's taking the 224 prior leadership classes we've been teaching for the last 5 years and integrating it into a coach.
So the interesting thing about AI is, like, I don't know if you've read or heard this notion of training data, right? An AI is basically an algorithm, and the algorithm is stronger the better the training data. And so there's all kinds of, just battles of training data. There is very little good training data on many subjects. And of course, the internet being full of like inaccuracies and whatnot, the training data of the internet is very difficult, which is why it costs so much money and the whole 9 yards. We started Leadership in Practice that runs every week around 5 years ago. We never, ever thought we'd be running it every week for 5 years. And what we intended in Leadership in Practice is taking maybe 2 decades of the best in authors and researchers and experts in every field that we interface with, and just sharing with you every cool thing that we're learning. And the main difference is not in theory, but in practice. So what our team sort of accidentally discovered as AI got more powerful is that, wait, we're sitting on a treasure trove of training data that if you use AI, it can analyze like 200, and this would be 25 weekly classes that run an hour to 2 hours. And based on any need you have, it will analyze it and give back basically what Megan and Charlie would say to you. And so they built a beta tool, which by the way, any of you can use. All you have to do is email aicoach@nextjump.com. So like Laura can put it in the chat. And it literally responds within a minute. It says 5 minutes, but it's usually around a minute. And if you just say AI coach, like speaking to someone, ask for advice on anything. It just comes right back at you. And it actually even references to leadership and practice classes. If you click on it, it goes to the exact timestamp that it's referencing. So it's kind of cool. Like, I mean, literally it's a way to like, you know, the idea of having a life coach, the idea of having an executive coach, the idea of having just a great mentor or advisor, right? Which, by the way, I still think a human mentor or advisor with experience that knows you far surpasses anything that AI will be able to do. But when you get AI combined with that, it's even more powerful. So it's just, it's like a giant, like get specific on your challenges, and it gives you some interesting reaction. So what's been fascinating for us is we never thought we would be able to database our own thoughts, our own, leadership lessons, and have it be used, to be honest, even for ourselves. So oddly,
Yes.
we are emailing our own AI coach, in essence saying, Megachar, which is our nickname for Megan and Charlie, co-CEOs here, tell me how you would do this. So this is literally the prompt, in essence. I fired off at AI coach 5:51 p.m. yesterday, so Wednesday, 2/26. It says, AI coach, we're trying to build a leadership and practice class on the topic of prioritization. Now versus later. Sequencing matters for momentum. 1, most people battle/argue/debate later as a category. 2, emotions get charged up as people generate conflict, often without recognizing the intellectual waste that occurs. And then 3, as a result, can't focus mental energy on the now. So think of now and later as a category, like 2 buckets, right? It's like if you're like rapidly preparing something in the kitchen, you got 2 containers. There's a now container and a later container. The key to successful navigation of today's ambiguous world is learning how to rapidly compartmentalize and segment any ideas, thoughts, projects into now versus later. Then be light and open-minded, less confrontational debates on the later, versus in the now category, invite conflict, have massive debates so that you and teams can figure out how to make the best decisions with speed. Argue to learn on things in the now category, learn to stop arguing on things in the later category. So, boom, this is what I fired out, and I will show you what it responded back.
Before you even do, it's so interesting, this word compartmentalize, because we've been teaching that in our brainstorming techniques and our module 4 that we built around strategic thinking. And the word compartmentalize, I think, used to have a very negative connotation, right? Like compartmentalizing, like, no, you gotta be thinking, you gotta be puzzling sort of all the different things that are happening, versus now, given the environment, right? And the 21st century, which we've been in now for 25 years, but it's just taken time to catch up to us that when we don't compartmentalize, you know what I mean? It had like, it's an unusual thing, because I think, the example used to be like men compartmentalize so much. It's like kid
So
could
fault.
fall down or something, and like they're like, what? My kid fell? Wait, what? I'm at work. I don't know. Like it's almost compartmentalized, yes, to a fault. Versus in general, women, especially moms, would have a much harder time doing that. And I think for a long time I felt proud of that. Like, got to be a leader. I got to be a wife. I got to be a mom. I got to take all of it, right? But not being and not able to compartmentalize actually was an issue. But I was proud of it.
And this is the part I would say, as a human skill,
Yeah.
if you go binary in anything, you're acting like a factory worker, right? Meaning compartmentalization overdone is lethal.
Right.
Like
Right.
non-compartmentalization overdone is also lethal. So
Right.
it's knowing how to use the different ingredients as levers and dials. You
Mhm.
have to know how to park things, but you have to know that if I ignore stuff, I'm missing the interconnected nature,
Right.
right? And so generally speaking, as a species and the way that, in genders, you find like men tend to, park and compartmentalize to a fault.
Right.
Women tend to connect everything to a fault.
Mhm.
And so when the two actually work together though, and debate, you're gonna see magic.
That's a
You're
good
gonna see
question.
huge,
Yeah, sorry, Big Papa's asking too, is it like parking, compartmentalizing and parking? Parking is
similar, it's just another
right?
language,
Yeah,
another
okay,
language.
okay, true, good point.
Like, you'll see men just have this bizarre ability, which is why even when you go to military, we saw in wars, like they can just compartmentalize crazy stuff and then go and like risk their life and,
Yeah.
like, but like, it's not to say women can't, it's just generally speaking,
Yes,
just generically.
Yes.
Quick other synonym to compartmentalize is, grouping and sorting. So grouping and sorting. Those are two skills that are critically important. You're grouping things together, but then you have to sort what order, right? So what the now versus later does is give you two buckets, right? It's clearly understanding a natural sort as you file things away. And so one of the best things in practice you'll see is there's all this baked in intelligence. The act of picking now versus later, it's already sorted,
Right.
right? So I'm gonna go into the response that came back, and the reason why I did this version this way is so that I can highlight some stuff, unless my computer doesn't let me as much, sorry. This is
Just going slow.
no, I have like the Zoom controls above, so I can't like, okay, so this is what came back in the AI coach. I'll read it in case like if you have bad eyes like all of us older people here, but okay, so the now versus later distinction is crucial for effective leadership. But many times, many miss the key insight. It's not just about timing, but good energy management. So one thing I'll tell you with AI, it's just really good at adding a lot of extra fluff. So the human judgment to be able to cut through the BS and get to the things that matter more. So there's 1, 2, 3 here, and I'm just gonna highlight in yellow so you can see it. The 3 most important parts, and then I'll highlight some pieces within it. And not everything is great, so you have to use discernment here. So it said first, rapid categorization, right? Teach the skill of quickly sorting issues into now versus later without getting emotionally invested in the categorization itself. This prevents decision paralysis. Meaning, before you go and start to put your mind into, is that good, bad, am I solving it? Like, where does it fall? Is this a now issue or a later? And there's all kinds of elements. You can do this in software development. You can do it in just anything. And every single piece. And by the way, the more you do it, you will get better at this. When you start, you will be really bad that you will literally be paralyzed and stuck debating the now versus later. What I encourage you to do is treat it almost like, remember Tetris? Most of you here are old enough to play Tetris. Treat it like Tetris. It's falling down. You got to throw in a bucket right away. If you don't categorize at that speed, you're not playing the game of life. You're in fact finding a way to just now take this and get paralyzed and do nothing. So like Tetris, you got to throw in a bucket, viscerally move, now versus later. Okay, so rapid categorization. Energy direction. Now issues deserve intense debate and intellectual conflict. This is where productive arguing leads to better outcomes. Later issues should be noted, but not drain current emotional or mental resources. What you will find if you practice this more often, where we argue till like our dying end is about later stuff. And the problem is this, there is no winning that argument. It's anyone's guess. And so we argue like, and then we throw like bullshit bullet points against bullshit bullet points, and you realize there's no resolution because you won't even know who's right or wrong till much, much later. Versus in the now stuff, you'll see pretty quickly who's right or wrong.
Mhm.
And so even if you actually make the wrong call, you'll know it was a wrong call because you'll pay the price,
Right.
right? So the amount of argument people have, right? It could be like, look, is Trump going to be a good president or not? We don't fully know yet, but you'll know later, right? But like, is like democracy dead or not? Like, I don't know, is climate change going to end the earth? Like, is my kid going to turn out okay or not? Like, and people can debate it, right?
Yeah.
You don't know. And so to recognize that it's not that later doesn't deserve debate, it's just before you go and start to debate later with someone, why don't you park everything into like when it's like compartmentalize later or now? And given that life is moving, why don't we start putting the energy into the now stuff?
Mhm.
As opposed to, most people say, you know what? It's a lot easier to go and start debating this later stuff. Now we get all pissed off at each other. I'm emotionally drained.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to look at what I got to get done.
I like what Olivia is saying. Olivia is saying, this is interesting because I'm good with rapid categorization, but the energy direction is what gets me. I assign the category, but then I find I'm still emotionally tied to some of the later tasks, which affects my performance in the now. This is a great little nuance. We talked about this yesterday. When that happens, right, and you still find yourself emotionally attached, you're putting the energy in it right now. Whatever you just thought about, scribble it down. That's the idea of puzzling. Write it down real quick, put it on a Post-it, a big sheet, whatever it might be, put it down because you just
This is a very
invested
important
emotional energy into it. Don't lose it. You
Very,
did it
very
already.
important point.
You did it
Very
already.
important point.
Like, so for instance, we have this big dance event next week. I can't think of an example, but I'm emotionally invested in different parts where we say park it. But if I haven't thought about it, because I let my energy go there, I may as well take advantage of it and just grab it, put it down so I don't forget it, but then park it. Because when I go back to that later category, as opposed to looking at a fresh, brand new thing, even though I invested some emotional energy in it, at least I have a note, right, of some good, valuable brainstorm piece that I can come back to later. So that is the part where it's not to say do that all the time. You know, you get a
Common
practice
mistake.
where you
What-
categorize it and then change your mind and now.
This is an in-practice mistake
this is-
everyone makes.
Right,
What I heard is don't even think about the later stuff, right?
yes,
Focus just on the now stuff. So if it's later, just write like maybe one word and then forget about it. No, but if your mind already raced and you have thoughts, scribble your thoughts down. It's hard to
Yeah.
recapture thoughts.
Yeah.
But do not engage in that, can I tell you this? And then even if you hear it, you might scribble your thoughts in reaction to someone's thoughts.
Yeah,
Do not engage in the battle of intellectual debating,
right,
right?
right.
Until you get a sense, that's called situational awareness or SA now, until you get a sense of what the landscape is. Because, by the way,
Yeah.
there are times I've been like camping, I've gone places sometimes, it's a late evening, right? Even over here on a Thursday, late evening, you know, like things are quieted down, I've had a few drinks, right? It's like fun sometimes to debate shit, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you laugh about it and whatnot. There's a time for that because it's kind of tedious being around a human being who's always got a now task they want to debate. I'm like,
Right.
can we just wind down and kind of talk about something highly controversial that we can just argue about or talk about, but like not have to worry about important shit I got to get done.
Right.
But there's a time for that, right? It's what we do with red wine. It's what we do with like vacation and like.
Right. No, I think in practice it's a great point. So you
But
don't
in
lose
practice,
the energy.
yeah,
on
don't
that.
lose, but be, just catch yourself, which by the way, everyone will do it wrong.
Mhm.
Totally okay, right? Like most things, do not think the first
Well,
time
so-
you played golf, you were great.
But
Like,
by the way, this
that's-
is critical, right? The self-awareness to say, because if I said, you know what, right now, I know this is in the later bucket because I already put it there, or we put it there as a team, but my energy is going into it. Can I just scribble this down? That's awareness. If I know this is not in the now versus being like, no, this is part of you have to be aware. This is not in the now, but I just let my energy go there. So.
And I've heard people then, and this is where the nuance goes in. I can't stop my mind thinking about this later thing. And so now I have to like keep
Yeah.
talking about it. I have to keep debating it.
Yeah.
And I have to keep feeding it. And then someone else is like, the more you say, they're gonna react. And once they react,
Yeah,
it
it's a
now
runaway
triggers,
train.
right? And I'm like,
Then,
just first recognize when you've created runaway trains and later stuff. And you can stop. And the question then is, how long before you're able to stop the runaway train? That could be a one way you look at, right? If you're getting better or worse, right?
Mhm.
If you can't even recognize that you had a runaway train, then you're getting much, much worse,
Yeah.
right? So awareness matters. Okay, momentum building. Number 3, show how this approach creates positive momentum by preventing emotional exhaustion from unnecessary debates, focusing team energy on immediate actionable items, building confidence through quick wins. I can't emphasize enough how this is probably one of the most important points. Confidence matters
Yeah.
because confidence, true confidence, comes from actual success. Fake confidence comes from shallow affirmations. And, Megan always shared this podcast with Steve Cutler.
Yeah.
Our brain knows its own BS meter. We have such a strong BS meter. You can say all the bullshit affirmations you want, right? Some people like to use the Lord's name for that. Some people like to use just, like peace on earth stuff. You should know, your own brain knows, your own BS, right? It does not work. There's nothing that will build more confidence than winning. And when you string together wins, and the wins tend to go in a category that's actually not all over the place, you will start to feel what they call momentum. And if you ever get the feeling, which we all have had somewhere, whether it's learning to run, lift weights, or like on momentum, whatever it might be, once you get a taste of momentum, you have to be like, oh, I want more of that. That's the first thing that happens.
Yeah.
And then most people think it's like up to the planets aligning, which is what's happening this weekend, right? Or like some randomness. No, it's a skill. There's a refined human skill you can train, which is how to generate momentum. And when you have that, you will get better at knowing what is momentum versus what is not, right? Okay, creating clearer paths for future planning. And this is something that is a nuanced caveat. So I don't know even what color I'd make it. I say nuanced caveat. One of the worst things we have all picked up from the industrial age is planning too many steps ahead. You're just making it up. And the further out you go, you're completely making it up. And somehow we think that I will be more prepared if I can lay out, well, if that happens, this happens, and every decision fork, and I lay out what happens, which, by the way, parents are brilliant at doing this for child raising, and you wonder why they're so stressed and always in disaster shape, because they're constantly startled by the unexpected thing the child does. Now, leaders find this all the time in employees. Anytime you do anything with human beings, hate to tell you, you're going to be full of unexpected, shocking surprises. And like I said in the beginning, human beings are the most adaptable species, which means if you say something and you praise them for it, they're going to now adapt to do a lot more of that. And then they're going to pick up your signal of the exact order, tempo, time of day, and people start pressing on what they think the boss wants to hear or what the friend wants to hear. It like turns into a game faster than you realize. And there's a danger to that adaptation, right? And I'm mentioning this because every single thing is full of ambiguity and uncertainty. So do not waste a ton of mental energy planning too far out.
Yeah.
And be open-minded, flexible, and ready for surprise paths that you don't expect. And I can't tell you the value of the individual who's able to just jump on, pounce on, take advantage of unexpected outcomes. That's a winner. That's a leader for the 21st century. So anyways, include practical exercise where teams practice categorizing issues, adjusting, so you can play games that if you want. If you really want, I think life's too short to play stupid games like this. If you want to play games, play categories or Pictionary or some other fun games, not this games, if you want. And some videos. So it picked two different leadership and practice classes, Leadership 187, two greatest impediments to human judgment, fast decision making. So it has when you click on the link, it goes to the exact timestamp, and it's like a minute clip you can watch, or you can watch more if you want. Key points about managing tasks, importance of tackling harder tasks first, learning to pull the trigger instead of overthinking. This, by the way, is much harder than people think, will only happen with rep practice. Learning how to pull a trigger quickly, but then being light enough to make an adjustment if you make a mistake. Understanding that prioritization comes after learning to take action. This is very counterintuitive for most people. That if you are not very good at taking action, I don't know why you even need prioritization skills. This is something that I can't emphasize enough. There was a whole training program we built called JFDI. It came from the British side. It just means just fucking do it, right? If you don't pull the trigger and you are constantly going and prioritizing things in your head, that's like having a to-do list that I don't execute anything on, but every single day I reshuffle the list, right? Like, it's just maddening. I've coached people and at some point very bluntly say, dude, you're doing nothing. Like literally you're doing nothing. You're doing nothing except making plans to make more plans and then resorting it and thinking that like, you got to just pull the trigger at some point, something. Otherwise you're doing nothing. So this understanding of, sorry, there's no baggage there, of course. Understanding that prioritization comes after learning to take action. It's a whole series of skills. You want to learn the skill and then have an issue. Now I need to learn that new skill
It's like
to overcome that issue.
It's like earning the issue, earning the next issue.
Yes, I would say earning the next problem.
Yeah, earning the next problem.
Earning the next
Yeah.
problem is just a critically important thing. Adapting to information-heavy environment that cause mental paralysis. The other one was lip 73. Coming clean, it feels so dirty. I don't remember exactly what we shared in that one, but the relevant topic was mind share and priority management. Leaders often give the most mental energy to challenging situations or difficult people rather than to high performers or important relationships. This is an untrained response that needs to be consciously redirected. So this is a really nuanced one now that this is more like kind of like an advanced topic. Let's see, most challenging to difficult people.
Yeah.
So
Basically,
I'll
the screaming person, the loudest screaming person.
difficult people.
Help,
We all have difficult people in our lives, right? And so if they just complain more, we put them in the now bucket. It's retraining your brain to put them in the later bucket. Because what you will find that when you go and spend your mental energy addressing and making that screaming individual, this is not all the time, but the screaming individual, like appeased, you'll see the best you're gonna get is appeasement. They will then go spend time coming up with the next issue.
Yeah.
And then the faster you go back to them, the faster they will come back at you, right? And it just takes
But you know
reps and experience to say they should fall in the later bucket.
You know what's interesting about that though, the human condition, human beings, we are so much better and faster. We're more trained, more skills at reacting to things. So when there's a problem, we are actually better at reacting because it's more clear. It feels clearer what to do versus, how do I work on the open sort of creative, top person, or how do I, that's a more creative exercise. I think that's why it's dangerous, right? Because we're more likely it's just easier to go to the problems.
Fire drills.
Yeah, fire drills.
Right? I think
Just trained
like a
it.
lot of us, how we put things into the now bucket is look around for smoke and fire. And
Right,
any fire falls in the now bucket. Anything that's not burning falls in the later bucket,
yeah,
right? By the way, that's okay. Meaning make that fucking mistake, right? That's called tuition.
Yeah.
And make it over and over again and recognize you keep doing it before you say,
yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
every fire I put out creates another fire.
Mhm.
What would happen if I tried this little piece in the later bucket?
Mhm.
Yeah, the fire will still burn, it will scream and whatnot, and you'll see maybe your prediction that it will burn down the whole house, maybe doesn't happen.
Yeah,
But you might be paranoid, so you're watching it, and then as you do, you're like, well, my now bucket is empty because I have no fires. Now, that's a difficult window to get by because people go into this moment of, I'm now doing nothing, right?
it is.
And you're gonna want to go back to your nicotine addiction of fires, right? And you feel so much better when something goes wrong.
Yeah.
Now, most people never admit that, but that's how we prioritize our time. I'm looking for something to go wrong, and when something does, it's kind of like an odd, dirty secret,
Yes.
right? I come alive, right? When there's a problem, I come alive. I'm useful. And you'll see.
It's no secret, I've said it, if you have not heard it before in leadership practice, I did say that to Charlie years back. I was like, after the 9/11 nightmare and all the bad things that happened, our business, the pain, I felt like we were plateauing, kind of hitting like a complacency. I'm like, God, we just need a good crisis to kind of rally us, right? Because I think as human beings, when there's a crisis, we rally. I'm like, God, I actually wanted a crisis, which sounds horrible, but it's true. And then obviously you get COVID and then other things. It's learning to not not need a crisis, but actually invent and create. It's like, we're so not used to that. Like, go white space to go create and invent something, because it comes with trying, iteration, experiment, ego, being humble. Like, it's a whole, anyways, it's a whole
So I
separate.
tried to paste it in, it wasn't coming as well, but,
I
just a
thought
little commercial break, I like this,
That's
right?
funny.
Me thinking whether to be skinny or to be happy. I don't know how many times you go through this decision fork. I do this many times a day.
I do.
I
Yeah.
generally try to pick happy and then figure out how to get rid of that happy by then going, force skinny for a while and then but once
Pizza
again,
looks so good. It looks so good.
I mean, that's a hard choice. I go through it many times a day, but I don't know what you guys do. Anyways, so moving on to, since we have a little more time,
Decisive versus decisive.
should I do indecisive, decisive, which was kind of cool?
Oh, wait, but before we
or
do, Greg, do you want to?
Should I go to silent killer?
We
or-
might have a
sorry,
few questions. Hold
sorry.
on. It's a silent
Sorry.
killer. We have so much good stuff we wanted to
Oh.
share today. Go ahead, Greg. Do you want to speak up
Oh,
or?
yeah. Oh, yeah, so, no, we can do some,
Yeah, let's do some.
we'll do some questions.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just saying yeah, maybe more piggybacking off what you were just saying in terms of the identifying, like in the now and the nuances of identifying the now versus later, in the sense of what comes to mind for me. I'm not deliberate in terms of necessarily that now versus later. In general, I'm more comfortable getting into action, but it did make me think about that it's so compelling, or of addressing the fires, addressing the near-term issues, or even some opportunities. You kind of see the opportunities, but without putting in the hard work of where does that momentum or addressing go, you just leads back to feeling like you're meandering in the same place.
So,
That was
one of
oh god.
I was going to say, I don't know if this helps. You can tell me if I'm going the wrong direction based on what you're asking, but, like whenever you make a decision, it's amazingly powerful just to scribble down or even out loud to someone, explain your reasoning, your bullets, right? Because imagine if I'm going to put this in the now, I'm going to put this in the later. It's like Tetris running real time, but I'm just putting my quick bullets, right, of why, right? Because I'm making a decision, categorizing it, and why. Because if you expose the reason why you made a decision, when time passes, it will actually tell you the truth.
Yeah.
If you made the right call or the wrong call. And you get to look at the bullets you said. However, just keep this in mind. We have an immune system. We hate to be wrong.
Yeah.
We hate to expose specifically what we're wrong about, which will invite critical feedback, right? Criticism. So it's a lot better to leave it ambiguous, categorize it, and then maybe use an excuse like, well, Charlie forced me to play Tetris and I had to categorize on one side. So I just picked the side. And then when someone says, well, I think you picked it wrong. Well, I was kind of leaning to the other side, but then I was in my head.
Yeah.
Everyone finds a way to dig their heels and justify why their own agency, their own judgment would have been the other way, because I know in hindsight, the other side would have been better, right? And that's the bullshit we feed ourselves. But it gets a little bit harder when you pick your choice and then put a few bullets down.
Right.
Because now you showed your logic, right? And by the way, it's a lot easier to, I'm going to put it in the now bucket on my bullets, but then can I also give you my bullets of why I should be in the later bucket, right?
So given this question and this comment, do you want to go to the maybe
No,
section we
so-
talked about
so-
this morning? This is really
Sorry,
interesting.
Greg, am I totally avoiding your question or?
No, that was helpful. One just last one, and you can address it later, but is on my mind. Sometimes I feel like in the later buckets where I could have things that are feel more complex, potentially the solution or the action is not obvious. I get it, of getting into debate, but there's no real intention. Having said that, I feel I make a separate mistake of not, they end up going into the avoiding section, which ends up, like I've observed, just my take on observation is it feels like you have a rhythm to your week, to a bit of at the end of the week, you're more on the later, but I don't know if that's
So there's a couple of thoughts I have on this. One is, I can't tell you how powerful it is for everybody on the screen to accept the fact that your mind is actually the mind of a teenager. I know some of you are a lot older than teenagers, right? And you're thinking, no, that's kind of insulting. I'm like 55 or 65 or 45 or whatever it is, right? Or 30, right? I'm not a teenager. Teenager starts at 13, right? But it was Barry Gentz from Harvard University said the average executive, not even talking about the starting employee, the average executive has the intelligence emotionally of a teenager. Teenagers start at 13, goes to 19, okay? So when it comes to this skill, what we're talking about, if you can just accept, without defensibility, just accept that your skills are of a teenager. Have you ever heard a 13-year-old explain their logic of why they did something? Right? And you literally have oh my God, how the hell did you logic that? Like, it's like crazy logic.
Yeah.
But they're very certain, right? Now, 13 is one thing, but as you go to 14, 15, 16, I mean, the level of certainty they can take, along with bullet points of their logic, right? So you're going to have the logic of a teenager, right? Forgive yourself a little bit, but also beat yourself up as you would coaching a teenager. Be like, what the fuck, guy, right? Or what the fuck, man? Like, this is like horrible. What do you mean that's logical?
But why did you
right?
bring that up related to what Greg just
So
said?
the
Sorry.
reason I said is this. So Greg mentioned the avoiding section.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
He's putting it in the later. If you did this enough at some point you would say, I wonder if it fits in the now. Maybe these things I keep avoiding, should I put it in the now bucket and run that course for a couple times and see what happens? See, like a non-teenager, right, would do that. But a teenager like has very instinctive and visceral certainty of what fits where, right?
Right.
Versus there's no sense of experimentation. There's no sense of I may have done it wrong, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then you would have to stick to it for a little bit to see if that's true.
You'd actually have to try stuff right on it, right? And actually see for yourself as opposed to, yeah, you'd have to see for yourself, which is I think the challenge,
so
right?
Greg said more complex. I get it. Now there's a little tone in there that made me say, I'm not sure it's fully right. You might throw complex into the later. And I think maybe some deserve to be in the now. The avoiding session, you're probably automatically throwing too many of them in the later.
Interesting,
right?
because Wei, you had said something about the now, he was sort of translating as the tactical and the later translating that as more of the strategic, right? So maybe the thing that's getting confusing is like, we're not, when you say now, we're not saying decisions
saying-
that, no, I know, I'm saying Wei, I think was thinking that and saying he has to recalibrate what we mean by that. The now is not just tactical things you gotta get done. The now is.
But I'll give you an example. We have
Yeah.
this huge event
Yes.
next week, March 6th,
Yeah.
right? 200 people coming in, massive dance event stuff. So Mega and
Yeah.
I, like, we'll give like an opening hello talk and then we'll give like a closing talk,
Yeah,
right? I mean, if I had to prioritize just between that very easily, I would prioritize the opening talk over the closing talk,
Right.
right? But because they have to connect, I might have some bullets that kind of string the two together,
yeah,
right? But given
Right.
it's March 6th and there's so much other shit that's happening before that,
yeah,
I'm not even sure I put any of it into
to
the
the now.
now bucket, right? We have so much stuff to get
Yes,
done ahead to get us to the place of
Right.
having this massive, well-done event that deserves a great opening talk.
right,
But since we
right.
said opening talk, I have, some thoughts of mine that I should mention.
Right,
So I
right.
want to, and then, some bullets I want to put in the closing talk.
Yeah,
But I put all of those in the later bucket.
right,
And they're like, but the event's next week. I was like, yeah.
yeah,
If I showed you how much shit I gotta get done in the now, you'd be
Yeah.
like, oh, that makes
right,
sense.
right.
This is all different by individual, right?
Mhm.
It's all different situationally, and you'll only know how to do this better by going through your teenage years and growing through them, right? The best advice to most teenagers is like, stop being so hard on yourself, just keep trying stuff.
But this is
Right.
where focusing on the hardest mission or the most important mission you have and getting momentum on that, until you do that, in some ways you haven't earned the right to go to the other things. Now you can't be
Yeah,
obtuse and say, well, I haven't yet. Now I
like,
can just
even then,
ignore
you're
things.
putting so many hard, fast
Yeah,
rules.
yeah,
Like, I come back to the ChatGPT first thing, right? Independent thinking. We lack independent thinking, right?
yeah,
But we think we have it. You meet a teenager, they think they have it. They're just regurgitating whatever socially or educationally has been pounded in their head.
yeah.
And you think they have independent thought, they're scared to have independent thought,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's almost like, I don't know,
Yeah, no, that's good. No, yeah.
we'll take another
Yeah.
question. Sorry, I feel like we're not gonna have time to get to other stuff, so.
I was thinking we could go to the maybe
yeah,
section
but
if you
it's
want,
like-
but it's too much. Okay.
Any things on this now versus, I think this is such
I
a
think it's
powerful tool.
big.
It's so
Yeah.
important.
Yeah,
If you're sitting here thinking, okay, I got it, I'm gonna do this, I'm like, oh God, help you, because it's much more complicated, so. I didn't get a chance to read the chat, Laura tends not to, Kathy, I don't know if you did, or anybody else. Everyone wants to unmute, kind of picking on Laura, because I'm hoping over time she just says, enough of that picking, I'm gonna.
go ahead.
I grabbed this, earning the next problem,
Mhm.
right, and I
Yes,
kind of circled that up.
Mhm.
Can you just open that can of worms a little
Yes,
bit more?
yes. So there is an investor, so I had the fortune and the misfortune of getting mentored way too aggressively, too early in my life. Which kind of also creates fourgois, right? Like fourgois and the duck being force fed. So I was force fed way too much advice from very successful people.
So you got good shit in you.
Yes,
Oh.
so, okay. So here's one that came out, one of the investors, he built, it's kind of small now, but back then, $1 billion consulting firm, three, actual Indian guys. Two of the founders invested in our company, but he introduced this concept and brought it to huge financial firms like the Deutsche Bank, Chase and whatnot. He called it the gated process. And what he explained, about the gated process was it's the oldest business model. It's the oldest mental model of operating a business, which goes to venture capital or private equity. If you ever go to a venture capital and private equity firm and you say, I have a great idea, can you write me a $10 million check? The best ones will say, you know what? Like, I like the idea. I'm going to write you a much smaller check and let's see what you do. And by the way, right? So maybe they'll write you $1 million check, or maybe it's 100,000 investment, who knows what, but they'll say, let me see what you can do. If you go and exceed their expectations, the next check might be even bigger than 10 million. But if you don't exceed and you underperform, they stop investing. The idea of the gated process is no different than the word speed of iteration. Through the process, as things unfold, you will throttle up or down, in this case, capital, but it could be human energy, it could be, resources. And so his point of what most companies do, right? Most companies build an annual plan, right? An annual revenue plan and a forecast and an annual budget of how to spend all the money we have, kind of like the US government, every government. It doesn't work out, right? That's like, they would say horrible, because forget about the revenue. They always say revenue numbers are soft, meaning revenue numbers are all made up and they usually are the ones that you always miss, right? And if you sandbag it, sure, but still you missed your projection. Cost numbers, you always hit, because you put it in your budget, you plan to spend it, you spend it. And his point was that is the dumbest thing that happens. There's a project that's launching, right? Because we have an annual budget, and within the first 3 months, holy shit, it's doing way better than we had planned. We should be pumping more resources into it, more capital, more funding, right? There's a project that is clearly not working. We thought it would be really good. We funded like whatever, 10 million or maybe 100 million towards it, or $1 billion. It's not working. You should stop funding it. But no, it's in the budget, so you get to keep spending it. So he introduced this notion of the gated process. Now, how the gated process ties into this earning the next problem. We are so scared of problems that as human beings, we think that we prepare ourselves by thinking of every problem and how to solve it up front, right? Versus, the best way to be effective, let the problem show up and let it show up again. Let it even break you a little bit, right? And then go solve it. That's the best way to grow children, right?
Yeah. Can I
Best
just
way
give
to grow employees.
Can I just give an example too? I was just thinking when you're saying this notion of earning the next problem, an example from 26 years ago, our biggest competitor was an organization called Abilizer. They actually had the URL Perks at Work. So we were corporate perks, but they were our biggest competitor. We ended up buying them. Here's where they earned the problem. Here's where it went wrong for them. If we build it, they will come. We will get massive traffic from all these companies signed up as clients. So what they did is they spent $100 million plus, whatever it was, on setting up servers for all the traffic that was going to come to their website. So that problem they worried about in advance. I'm going to spend all this money and I'm going to set up all these servers because we're going to get so much traffic. That problem never came. They went out of business. We bought them for like nothing. They were our biggest competitor by a mile. They were like the gorilla in the space.
Yeah.
There's a longer story behind that.
I think they planned for 10 million simultaneous users
coming
at once. Point. And so they built the entire tech infrastructure to make that happen. They never even got close. Versus if you remember originally Twitter, going years back, had the fail whale and it kept popping up.
Yeah.
They earned the problem of too much traffic.
See how it's I earned it. I got people to my site to the point where it crashed. Now what do? It doesn't sound very strategic to wait for that problem to happen, but if you build it, if you spend all that money and build all this stuff in preparing for that and it doesn't happen, you go out of business. You're done. You didn't earn it. You didn't earn that problem. Yeah. There's nobody came.
Yeah, I can't tell you.
So that's an example of them not earning their problem.
They didn't earn their problem. They went out of business. They're gone. That's it.
Earning the problem. I can't tell you how powerful that is. And it's almost like, and as you go through, the problem will direct you to what you should do next sometimes.
Right.
Now, this I know sounds counterintuitive to the putting fires out, but there's a difference of a problem I earn versus like people whining, complaining, like fire drills everywhere.
Yeah.
Like I like to earn problems.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's such a big one, a great example to keep in mind, because it's like they went out of business. They were the biggest in the space.
I mean, like I'll give you an example even on this AI coach. It's going through like, I can't tell you how many like pages of training data to actually keep getting this better. But now that it's kind of pretty effective and there's a lot to do, we have a problem of actually trying to figure out how to feed it even better and train it even better. Like, I like that we have that problem.
Yeah.
Right? Now I've got our employees suggesting, hey, can they go and read through your emails and all the stuff and add it more? I'm like, Jesus, right? Like that's exactly the kind of stuff that people love to, contemplate and then do. And I was like, first answer is F no. But the second thing is like, the beauty of good training data, it's already clean. We created 225 classes now for a specific, already filtered purpose of leadership in practice. The reason why most training data doesn't work, it's got everything from, well, some in practice, some like, my brain fart, some like kind of meaningless. So all of that is fed in and the computer can't tell the difference. So it mashes it all together and, gives you like in practice combined with some random shit, and randoms are like, a bad day, and like, it's not good training data. So.
Yeah. Santiago, I think, Rich, you guys are putting some commentary too and about categorization, and I don't know if we have a
Anyone
few
wants
more
to
minutes. Go
unmute?
ahead,
We
you
got a
guys.
few minutes. Anyone can
Whoever
unmute and ask away. You do it all at once too if you want, but
Like Richie's getting the mic.
yeah, they usually don't have a.
Yeah, mine was around like the fear of now versus later. So I mean, I'm more of a fearful guy. So like even like as engineering, I'm like to that point, right? Like for the Twitter whale, like that's like a thing for me. Like like it's going to fail. The mobile app is going to fail, and so when we prioritize things for the later, it's like usually things that are more kind of like that load balancing, those kind of things, and I keep worrying about that. So it's more about, for me, like I put it there, like it's more like prioritizing it honestly. Like if I'm saying like it's for later, but I'm always keeping on thinking about it, it's either two things. So one for me was like it's a happy, like the pizza thing, like it's a happy distraction for me, or else it's like I have a fear that we'll never get to it and then it's going to break down. So it's to that point, right? If I build like this $100 million server farm and we never even get the load, like is it even worth it? So something like
So,
yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot you threw in there, right? You even throw in words like prioritizing honesty or something, I think is what I heard, right? And I have whatever you're making up in your head is not necessarily honesty. Maybe I like the word accuracy. I cannot tell you how much inaccuracy we walk around with. Our assumptions are incorrect. Our mental models are incorrect. Like I said, the average adult walks around with the inaccuracy of a teenager, but with the certainty of a teenager, with the lack of wisdom and the nuance, which, by the way, you just learn over time, right? All teenagers grow up at some point, right? The beauty of the world is it kind of eventually gets you, better. Like you could still be a 50-year-old teenager, which I have seen many of, but like just generally speaking, the reps of life kind of get you better. And I mentioned this saying, when you said the fear of now versus later, how about the fear of complacency? How about the fear and the definition of insanity? Like you're doing the same shit over and over again and nothing's changing, right? But every day you come in thinking it's going to be different today or different this week. This idea of, I don't know, like say you're building a mobile app, there's why no traffic versus the extreme end of why too much traffic. I would generally rather have the too much traffic problem than the no traffic problem. But we actually go so timid that we go into, generally speaking, right? Well, I don't want to disappoint people. I don't want to be, saying no. I don't want to oversubscribe and then not be able to deliver. And so we do almost most things timidly. In fact, when we built this developmental GPS, the ultimate dev GPS 4 to hit was, we called it bold and speed, right? Learning how to be bold and to do it fast is a rep skill. And those who do it better have a better grasp of understanding the past, understanding kind of future predictions, and they can do that rapidly, which just comes with practice.
Before we go, actually, I think you're right too on this, Kathy, but I was gonna say, Richie, the thought I had was, sorry, you started by saying I'm a fearful guy, by the way, just so you know, a human condition, we all are. I mean, just you don't think you're the only person, like you're not unique at all. And the more you say that to yourself, the more you're like, I'm different than everybody. I've got this issue. No. Everybody has that issue. Nobody wants to fail. Everybody's fears failure. It's like a real thing,
And it's much worse now, right?
It's much worse.
Just
now.
go look at every mental health
But
stat.
the only thing I was gonna say was this idea of like, I forget how you said it, but if the mobile app and it crashes and you're being judged, made a mistake, or maybe that was Santiago, but just this idea that will get in trouble. I think one of the things I was working on with Charlie is similar to this yesterday, which is having to ask, if you actually played it out saying, my fear is the mobile app crashes, something bad happens, and then what? it's like you actually have to play out the different scenarios. What do you actually, because I feel like keeping that really fuzzy is making you think getting in trouble. It's almost like, okay, what, so Charlie's gonna email you and say, WTF, guys, what did you not think of? Like, what do you, is that
No,
really
no,
that
no,
bad,
no,
or is
no,
it, I'm
no,
just making, I'm just
that's not
saying, like,
true.
whatever
That's
that
not
thing
true.
is.
No, I say that's not true because
Okay.
I could say what the fuck.
Right, you could.
No, no,
I'm
but
saying
I
you
know, no,
could.
but I'm
That's-
saying, so there was earn your problem. There's another
Oh,
class we can
okay,
build
good.
called pick your error.
Okay, so Laura
Pick your
mentioned that,
error,
erring
right?
on the side,
To me,
yeah.
pick your error.
Yeah.
So in this case, I'm saying I'd rather pick the error of too much traffic than no traffic, right? I'd rather pick the error of too much traffic so our thing crashes than like picking the error of, yeah, it didn't crash, but we have no traffic. Like, that's another rep
Yeah.
skill that's important. We could probably teach a whole class on earn the problem versus pick your error.
Mhm.
Most people think they're not picking,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, but I'm
Yeah.
watching what you do and you seem to be picking the same choices, which means you're picking your error, right?
Yeah.
So maybe at the risk of jamming too much in just for 5 minutes, I'll just kind of cover this. Maybe this is one I fired up this morning, which is really good.
Finally, I've been waiting.
Right? Okay, so the
Okay,
maybe
this
silent
is a good
killer.
one.
Yeah, this is kind of a cool
Good.
one. So,
The ChatGPT, our AI coach, the detail it shared back this morning,
It's so
reading it, I was
cool.
like, holy crap,
It's
it's
cool.
so good.
Okay, so you can see Thursday, 8:32 a.m. This is what I fired at AI coach, right? AI coach, help me develop more thinking around the concept of maybe being the killer of decision making. In today's world of uncertainty and ambiguity, it is natural and normal to articulate every decision fork as a maybe. Meaning, I want you to picture going in a dark room. The right answer is maybe in everything. Because how would you know, right?
Right.
That's today's day and age. Everything is a maybe. So saying maybe is not gonna say anything original. But a lesson we learned years ago from Ram Shriram in how Google built their recruiting and hiring machine was to eliminate maybes. Everyone had to give a thumbs up or thumbs down. There were no maybes. The elimination of this waffling in between indecision choice of maybe forced people to pick/use their judgment and select a side. And over time, people selected their majority side, yes or no. Now, that's really important. The majority is what you want to get to the place of picking. Then had to, in bullets, explain why yes versus why no. The collective intelligence of a body of people, a team sharing the strongest/majority intuition with details behind it. LOI stands for ladders of inference. There are reasons for why learning, leaning to yes versus no was the most powerful sense-making, pre-decision-making data as a collective unit. Help me explain this better. So what the AI coach gave is actually even better than what I wrote. Let's see, which is what I love. And there's two versions of AI coach now that comes back at you. There's a quick take, which is really punchy, and then there's a longer one. Sometimes it's like different. So I'll just read you the quick take. And you'll see I sent it at 8:31 and fired it back in 2 minutes, which is cool. Insight, maybe is not a safe middle ground, but a decision-making trap that prevents progress and keeps you stuck in a revolving door of inaction. Challenge, force yourself to make binary yes/no decisions to sharpen your judgment over time, like training a muscle that gets stronger with each clear choice. Action, embrace the power of a quick no over a slow maybe. Clear decisions, even wrong ones, create valuable learning opportunities, while maybe only creates stagnation. Ancillary, I think she's going to change it to additional points. But when you eliminate maybe, you build better judgment, create collective intelligence through articulating your reasoning and actually reducing risk by making your decision-making process more concrete and actionable. Most relevant lip video, lip 73, coming clean and feel so dirty. The problem with maybe in this clip is where I share actually, Google found maybe kills decisions. They're fixed thumbs up or thumbs down. No instant thumbs up equals a no, works for hiring, sales, relationships, leadership. Okay, so that was the shorter version. I'll give you the
Next
longer
one's
one, which
so
is actually,
cool.
which I thought was even better.
Yes.
They were both good. Okay, here's a redefined explanation of why maybe kills decision-making. Maybe is a comfortable hiding place that prevents real progress. It's like being stuck in a revolving door. You're moving, but going nowhere. When Google eliminated maybe from their hiring decisions, they discovered something powerful. Forcing a binary choice, yes, no, actually sharpens judgment over time. Think of it like training a muscle. When you're forced to commit to either yes or no, you start noticing patterns in your intuition. You begin to trust your gut reactions more because you're getting regular feedback on your decisions rather than staying in indecision limbo. Right? I
This whole
can't-
section is so, this
So,
whole, think of it
that,
like
that
this
little
is-
part, I can't tell you how important that is right there, right? If you say maybe, every other person around you, yeah, I can see it's a dark room, total ambiguous choices. Yeah, I can agree with your maybe. You get zero feedback, low calorie feedback. If you pick a choice in an ambiguous situation and you explain the bullets of it, someone else is going to naturally be like, what the hell are you talking about? It's not so clear. Let me tell you what the other side is, and you will see that you actually argue to learn as opposed to arguing to be right. It's brilliant. Okay, the key insight isn't just about making faster decisions. It's about building better judgment. When people must explain their yes-no reasoning, it creates collective intelligence that's far more valuable than individual waffling. Collective waffling, by the way, is like toxic, like just goo. I mean, you'll see like when you feel that green goo come from someone with waffling, another person waffles, and then you have two people collectively infecting everyone with more waffling. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, right? God help you guys gooing everyone, right? It transforms vague feelings into concrete insights. The irony is that by removing the safe middle ground of maybe, you actually reduce risk. Clear decisions, even wrong ones, create learning opportunities. Maybe just creates stagnation. Reminder, a quick no is better than a slow maybe. At least with no, you can move forward. So there are two LIP classes, the Google part, and then it says LIP 186, how do we break trust? The power of clarity and decision-making. Top performers, especially in sales, prefer definitive answers. They would rather get a firm no than a maybe. This is like the best salespeople. They'd rather get a firm no than a maybe. The middle zone or the maybe zone is considered lethal. This principle applies across fields, including hiring practices, where it's better to clearly identify top performers and poor performers, rather than getting stuck with the mediocre B candidates. In recruiting, this is one of the biggest insights we iterate and applied over time. The first thing you do when you get a pool of candidates is to identify your C's, your definitive no's. They're usually more obvious. Then you figure out off a smaller list the A's. Whatever energy you have left, debate on the B's, right? It's a crapshoot either way. Versus you think of what people do, we're all debating on the B's. It's like maddening. Like, it's like Kathy's goo is infecting Laura's goo. And then Tom is like, I'll give you some goo too. And everyone's like, so do we basically collectively agree the whole thing is a maybe?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that you just basically, what Megan used to say, Captain Obvious, the whole situation, that everything is a maybe. Anyways, we gotta run. We are gonna be late for this. We have to give a little opening talk.
Yes,
But
maybe
I
it's
hope,
back to squirreling, yes.
that's helpful.
Mhm.
Please, try it. Use the AI coach.
All right, seriously,
If you
that
don't
last
want
one
to use
was,
it, you don't have to use it.
that last piece blew my mind. The whole idea that you could actually begin to trust your gut reactions. It's because you're getting real feedback, regular feedback on decisions rather than staying in decision limbo.
Getting
Awesome.
feedback on your indecision is dumb, okay?
Getting feedback on
That's
your
like,
decision.
that's like, I love what Weiwei said. It's like, should I go work out? Should I not? Getting feedback on that waffling, it's just dumb. Go do something and then you can get feedback. You squat the wrong way, you lifted too much weights, or you didn't lift enough. As opposed to, can I get more feedback on my thoughts of maybe going to the gym and maybe doing a workout? Do you have any thoughts? And if you go and pull someone's mind share in and you waste their mind share with that crap, good luck keep getting their mind share because you won't. The good one will run and you'll just be surrounded by the numbskulls who are like, oh, I'd love to give you some feedback. I'd love to coach and advise you, right? The people who are like free to coach and advise you are usually the ones you want to run away from.
Well, it was
So,
good to see you guys
anyways.
this week using the AI coach. Next week is our test kitchen. So,
Oh,
so next
Oh,
week,
oh my
Chef
God.
Danny is
Whoa, whoa,
going
whoa.
to,
I was gonna say, this one, the next week's test kitchen, I think is life-changing.
it's gonna be focused. Danny's going to teach, our chef Danny, right, food is medicine chef, who cured cancer in a 6-year-old daughter. He is going to show us how to make fermented tofu that actually eats breast cancer cells.
Let me repeat what
At
this,
11
like I just said,
a.m.
breast cancer. Like it is spreading like,
It's very
I think
scary.
as fast as COVID probably at
Very
times
scary.
now. It is actually a recipe of how to build some food that is all organic that eats breast cancer cells. He learned this working with a top fermenting expert in Japan, 80-year-old guy. And he thought it was too complex, so we just kind of said, you know what? We want it in the class. So this thing is like miracle stuff. So prepare for that next week.
And by the by, Maria, who's our Alfred, said it also is helping with menopause symptoms, all kinds.
All
So
kinds of
I'm like,
menopause
let's
symptoms.
go.
I mean, this thing is like as good
Let's
as.
go, because that shit's scary. So.
Like, and so,
It's
so,
good to see you back, Karen. Yeah. Oh, first time in a
and
long
by the
time
way,
where I had some confidence.
and those of you who
Oh,
want to come in person to,
Yes.
to actually that
The
class,
meta-
which I think is going to be kind of insane, because in New York City, I think every
Okay.
woman over 25,
Who
I
does
think is
not
like,
want to know how to avoid these things?
you have to buy a ticket to come to the dance event next week. There's only a few left, but
If you want to come in person
and
to
if you do, you're invited all day, including coming and tasting the fermented tofu, which tastes like truffle chocolate, oddly.
Chocolate.
But you'll learn how to make it, which is really cool.
Karen, you got to get out here, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? You know,
But-
gotta get you back.
If you don't have fears of breast
All right.
cancer, then you know what? Doesn't matter.
Or menopause
Not relevant.
Issues. Okay, guys.
More
we'll
fear of menopause
see-
and no issues.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week. Hopefully some of you in person.